What's up, fandom? My name is Josh, and today I am joined by two very special ghosts. You're ghosts. Congratulations. You're not actually here.
This is how I find out I'm dead. I've been dead this whole time.
Congrats. I'm glad you guys are ghosts. No, we've got two very special guests, or ghosts. I don't judge. We've got the head writers and co-executive producers of Wizards Tales of Arcadia. We have Aaron Waltke.
Yep, that's me.
And Chad Quandt. I said it right the first time in prep, dude, then I was like, how about Quint? Can we change your name? Is that okay?
Chad Quandt is my knockoff name for kind of more twee books. That's my Chad Quandt book.
Whenever he signs in at the Prancing Pony.
I will back you up, Josh. You said it correctly before the record, and there's no evidence now.
There's no evidence. There's no evidence that I said it correctly. But hey,
it's no big deal. It's a silly name.
They'll never know.
How you doing?
Not bad. Yeah, I'll edit it. I won't. I'm lazy. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming on. How are you guys doing this wonderful? We decided it was a Tuesday.
Yeah, I think based on the whatever standard of society we have right now, I guess it's a Tuesday. And I guess Wizards is coming out in three-ish days, depending on what time zone you're in. It's been pretty nuts getting to just share the excitement with everyone online. And I think, like Aaron said, it's been a long time coming, back from when it first got crafted in our brains as story writers. Until now, it's actually a living, breathing 10 episodes of glory you can check out.
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think before we started recording, it's been 2 years since we started working on this, and so it's been this long process of slowly little drops here or there, announcements here or there. Thankfully, we announced that Wizards existed, back when we announced the full Tales of Arcadia trilogy, but a lot of it, had not really been discussed or announced. All we had was a single log line. And so we were just being hounded, I think, for the better part of a year and a half of what's in Wizards? Who's going to be in Wizards? When's Wizards come out? How many episodes are Wizards? And finally, we're at this end game scenario where it's all coming to light and everyone's completely overwhelmed.
Yeah. And we are going to preface this episode, spoilers going forward for Wizards. I was able to check it out early, and thank you everybody at DreamWorks for that. That was super great. So spoilers for Wizards. So if you haven't watched Wizards, because this episode comes out on Monday the 10th, so if you haven't seen Wizards, why?
Nice.
Go ahead, pause this, and then go check it out on Netflix and Troll Hunters and Three Below, because if you watch Wizards without watching those, I'm sure confusion will happen. You'll be like, I don't know who any of these people are.
That's a very fair point, by the way, John. If you're gonna watch Wizards, it would definitely be in your best interest to at least go back through Troll Hunters and some select Three Below episodes they're gonna pay off. But yeah, at the same time, I would love to know anyone's thoughts who just watched Wizards first. If you jump in and you get to just who's this Dukesy guy? There's a troll boy named Jim. I wonder how he got that way. I would love to know if the story clicks for people, because we want it to be a self-contained story in its own way.
Yeah, I imagine it would be a little bit like watching the first half of Endgame without having seen any of the Avengers films, which I suppose it kind of stands on its own. It's this mean guy got a wish glove.
Even better, the second part of Endgame.
Oh, yes.
When it's just where'd all these people come from? I don't understand.
Exactly.
Why are we going back to the past? Things are weird.
There's a little bit of interest, by the way, that Endgame came out. Let's see. I think Infinity War came out right as we were doing Wizards, and then there was some interesting parallels, just story-wise, of Endgame as we watched it. This is somehow both similar to Wizards and not at all in terms of doing a time travel fulfillment story. It'll be interesting to see how people
you guys did
respond to it.
I will say I didn't see. You said it's called Infinity War.
Yeah, it's just this weird indie project. Robert Downey Jr. did it. I don't know. It did okay.
Robert Downey Jr., the guy from Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Exactly.
That guy? All right,
Next
okay.
Big Bang.
Like,
I'm hoping he's
the
gonna
guy
get
from
gonna get a big breakthrough at some point.
Yeah.
At least that Doolittle movie will do well for him. I'm hoping.
The guy from Heart and Soul was in it.
What was that movie that he was in with Anthony Michael Hall? And they were like football kids.
Oh my
Is that
God.
Less Than Zero? Even though I have never seen Less Than Zero, I'm gonna
Maybe I don't remember.
That sounds right.
But yeah, that was Anthony Michael Hall being he was like super jock. Like he's a very skinny blonde kid as like star quarterback, and I'm like, really? He's getting scouted by everybody. All right, sure, whatever.
He wrote that really good essay in high school, and now he's getting scouted by football teams.
And is somehow going to bring down corruption in like college football, like I don't know. Anyway,
okay,
watch that movie.
Let's just talk about that movie.
Go watch Wizards. Yeah, but anyway, so about this movie, we start. I'm just kidding. So for Wizards, again, we're gonna spoiler heavy. Starting now. So guys, I want to say like I love a good redemption story. So what you guys did with Morgana, I was like, it was pretty class for me. Did you guys know back in Troll Hunters that you wanted to do something like this for her? Like she was not going to be like the big bad. There were other people like the Arcane Order that were the bad guys.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, it's hard to remember just because, again, it was 4 or 5 years ago, everything that we had planned out versus everything we had ideas for. They all kind of bleed together and inevitably wind up getting used at some point. But I do remember that when Guillermo first pitched Wizards, it was the discussions we had with him was he was like, Morgana is essential to this because, even though we get a glimpse of her at the end of Troll Hunters, she is very much sort of like her own character with her own, vengeance story that kind of goes incomplete in Troll Hunters. And, while a lot of people and a lot of fans loved the character, they wanted to know more. We only kind of hinted at her kind of rivalry and feud with Merlin, and we very lightly hinted at the Arthuriana of it all, of the origins of the amulet and such. But, in terms of her backstory, how she became, this rage-filled Queen of the Apocalypse, it was something that as we really dug into what is this show called Wizards, and, what does it mean to be a mentor or an apprentice, and what does it mean to be, for the freedom of magic as Morgana proclaimed she was, that means that inevitably someone is trying to put order on magic, and in this case it's Merlin and Arthur. And then on top of that, we're like, well, it can't just be, she's the only one who's ever thought that magic is good and deserves to live on its own. So we started to explore like, well, where does magic come from? And that got into whole conversations with Guillermo about, the origins of the universe and the ley lines of the universe. And we eventually arrived at these elemental wizards who were essentially the first wizards and became the Arcane Order.
Yeah, I think like there's stuff like the Arcane Order. We're back on Troll Hunters. We'd be like, excuse me, what'd you say? We hadn't even uttered that phrase yet. But like Aaron was saying, we are at least looking into, even if we don't have the time to get into what Morgana's full story is in Troll Hunters, right? You hear the details like her saying, I think to Merlin, like, you cut off my hand, to build even stuff like that was built into Troll Hunters that we wanted to pay off in Wizards. It was more that desire of that we want to tell a villain that you see their perspective on things. So I think every good antagonist is the hero of their own story. We really believe in. And so that even if you don't get to learn all of that, which hopefully you can, and I think Wizards does a lot of that, you can see where this woman who had better intentions and she could have been the hero of this story, right? And things had gone differently. She could be a very different character, but because of biases and misunderstandings and personal judgments, like she is sent down a more tragic path that you almost like want to root for her a little, right? You want to like, you don't want to see her bring about the end of the world, but you're like, yeah, she's not that bad. She's okay, right?
Yeah, I like when we first meet her in Camelot, I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, okay, this is I kind of see what we're doing here. I was honestly I thought we were gonna have, since we had all three of our parties in different areas, I was thinking, okay, Claire and Morgana are gonna do this, cool little bonding thing. I was also thinking that Jim was maybe gonna try and bond with Gunmar a little bit, because I was like, maybe so like we can almost see like, he's fighting with the trolls and be like, this Arthur guy, he's a bad dude. And then you've got Morgana and Claire being like, this Arthur guy, he's a bad dude. And then you've got Steve being, I don't know, Steve, with Lance and everybody being like, yeah, I'm Steve. I don't know what to do with that. Just leave him out there. Yeah, and then you have Doc's going with his like doing Duke, sorry, kind of almost like maybe, because I was feeling that Merlin maybe not the best guy, like kind of gets like, it's like maybe be a little bit nicer to you people. So I was kind of thinking of maybe that's what we're gonna have, and you'll maybe see this like history turn, which you guys, kind of does happen. We do get like a history-esque turn a little bit.
It's interesting because we always felt like Troll Hunters and Tales of Arcadia worked best when the heroes and the villains, as Chad was alluding to, don't occupy those perfect archetypes of like, you are the black hat, I'm the white hat. It's, all these characters, they have their own wants and needs and point of view. Sometimes that point of view is sort of tormented or twisted by, whether it's fate or bad things that happen to them, and they get sort of a vindictive streak in them, and that's how you get sort of the anti-villains that we have. Gunmar is, even though we don't sort of have him bond with Jim, I think something that was important to Guillermo and us as we were writing this was to kind of show that, in Troll Hunters, we only got a perspective that like, oh, he hates humanity and he wants to eat people. And that was about as far as you got as his motivation. And he was like, oh, I should rule the surface lands. And so we wanted to explore a little bit deeper in this, and you get hints of it, especially in like Callista's backstory, that it's been this sort of ongoing sort of gang war that's been escalating into a really intense conflict between the world of humans, as led by Arthur, and the world of trolls, which, just by might makes right, is currently ruled by Gunmar. So you kind of, even though Gunmar is not a good person per se, or a good troll, you see that I guess his hatred of humanity is sort of fueled by Arthur taking these raids out and expanding his territory, and doing what he thinks he needs to do to protect his people. And Gunmar, in his own sort of like despotic way, is also trying to protect his people by essentially fomenting the conflict to the point where it's almost on the outbreak of a full-on war.
I'm sorry. I'm still thinking about Jim just getting to hang out with Gunmar and bonding for like a couple episodes.
That's totally what I was thinking was going to happen. I was like, oh, okay, he's going to bond. It's going to be great.
It's a pretty cool sword. If only you could like mind control trolls with it. That's a good idea. I think I'll start doing that. Oh no, I shouldn't have told him that. I think that's you're reminding me, Josh, of like when we were breaking up the season. I think there were probably 20 other big character interactions, permutations that we wanted to see, right? There were so many moments of characters for the reunion's sake, for characters who had been separated who never got to share things. And we really had to pick like what were the ones that were most crucial to the story that we were wanting to tell, right? About like breaking from essentially your heritage, being able to deal with kind of morally gray mentors, like these themes that were speaking to us. Which of those relationships spoke to the most to us, and ones we had to see. Like there's no way we couldn't show Blinky and Arg's first friendship, because they're so important to us, and we're hoping that that's as rewarding to see as it was for us to write.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned Morley Gray, and earlier you mentioned Merlin. Merlin, I think, is, to say the least, a controversial figure in Tales of Arcadia, and I think we didn't seek to necessarily dissuade you from the belief that he is kind of a jerk and kind of demanding. If anything, we wanted to show you a little bit of why he became so cantankerous and bitter, especially the turning point of when he loses Morgana, which he doesn't let down his walls very often, but when he does, the one emotional outburst you see before things evolve in the plot is when Morgana, he thinks he's lost her. And, it's a hint that, this guy is scarred by centuries of seeing people, not being careful or not following the rules, or these elaborate plans he's constructed to keep them safe and, try to find the best of all possible worlds. And in doing so, he loses people time and again. So he starts to become hardened and strange and, perhaps a little bit cruel in his methods, just because he doesn't have time to, bandy about the point. Ultimately, I think by the end of Wizards, we have Merlin realize his mistakes. His dying breath, he says something along the lines of, I spent so long serving the wrong master when I realized that, I should have been, serving not the greater good, but the good within us. And there's something, I think, that is telling in Duxie's story that when Duxie decides to not necessarily follow Merlin's plans, he's using his own moral compass. He's not just following this guidebook that was laid out by Merlin. And, I think Merlin had become so sort of set in his ways that he lost sight of the trees because he was so concerned about the greater forest. And that's something we really highlight, especially in the last couple episodes, is that Merlin is someone that I think got so focused on just kind of utilitarian minimizing harm that he forgot to think about the importance of the individual. And that's something Duxie kind of reminds him of, even if it's too late.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you do get a good payoff in the last episode with both of with Merlin and both of his apprentices.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really nice. Let's kind of talk about some of the new characters that get introduced in season 4. I mean, we have He's a Dukes, which, I mean, again, he was in Troll Hunters, but he was really just kind of a waiter, pretty much. It's basically yes. He was a busboy.
I'm sorry, a waiter and a busboy are the most essential jobs.
This is true. I mean, and he is in he's in California, so I mean, like, he's probably pursuing a dream in acting. So one day
he does mention I think in Troll Hunters that he has a band. What was it? Ash Dispersal Pattern.
Yeah.
I wish we'd gotten to show that more. That would have been really good to do. So you're right, Josh. He's right down that rabbit. California career.
He's ready. He's ready. I mean, you gotta put your time in. We also meet the Arcane Order, Arthur, Archie, which we do meet in the last episode of Three Below.
Yeah.
So we do meet him again. Lancelot, Galahad. We do meet Drea and then Nari, among others, but those are the ones that I wrote down. So those are the ones.
Oh yeah, don't forget Callista, our amazing Stephanie Beatrice is a
I went
from the past.
I was gonna go with just Drea, since that's her troll name and all.
Oh yes, that's true. It's
Callista.
It's technically Dea.
Oh, it's
not
Dea,
to be that guy.
not,
It's actually
Drea.
Dea, actually.
Yeah, I can't read my writing.
No worries.
Oh, well.
No worries.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely an ensemble cast. There's no question about it. And I think that was one of the more interesting challenges, is because, regardless of what Wizards would be, we had 10 episodes. And so we had to treat this more like a mini series, or even like one long movie, to try to get it all in. And we also wanted to, take less of a kind of serialized episodic television approach and a lot more of like a novelistic approach. So specifically so that we could kind of like touch each of these storylines in a way that felt like it had a beginning, middle, and end. And it was also a really interesting experiment to try to, for some of these characters, you know, that we're brand new to and we've never met before. You know, who are they? What makes them tick? What makes them different? And that was something I feel like Trollhunters always did exceptionally well, and Three Below as well. And you know, it was exciting to kind of dive in.
Yeah, yeah, and also adding onto Aaron's thing, like because of the limited time we have, because of how much stuff we already wanted to do with our core characters that you've already met, it was very much a strategic look at which characters would have the biggest impact on our heroes, you know, as kind of mirrors for them to reflect off of. Even picking, I think when we're like, which Knights of the Round Table does Steve get to deal with? You know, Lancelot and Galahad. We went through the full roster of like which two or three knights, that because that's all really the time we had, like could be the biggest influence on Steve's knightly career. You know, knightly career sounds like he's going to become a talk show host, but
Yeah,
you know what even that too is like that level of like picking on who we most want to see, and also who do we want to see our characters have the biggest impact on, like Jim getting to essentially teach the first troll hunter was really, really important to us. A nice kind of like cyclical nature that you can only do in time travel stories, but a one that also felt really redeeming of for Jim to get to teach Blinky the stuff that Blinky would teach Jim. While it might break your brain in time travel logic, it felt so right for us for those characters.
Yes, and that we definitely wanted to make sure that there was an internal logic, at least for ourselves, you know, for some of the time travel logic of it all. But it did at a certain point, we were like, all right, we're not going to just do Back to the Future rules. We're not just going to do this. We had to kind of create our own rules. And but you know, I think with magic, because magic is literally when you defy logic and do the impossible, it became sort of this fun sci-fi fantasy or a science fantasy, which I guess Tales of Arcadia has always played in. But as far as the other characters, Chad mentioned, you know, Callista and Blinky and Dea, and you know, I think we also thought it was very interesting in keeping with the kind of, you know, the mentors in this cycle of you know, end of the world and violence and peace and war and peace. We're like, how do you break that cycle, and how do you represent that cycle? And we thought, you know, the Arcane Order in particular would be a very interesting perspective of you know, kind of like this very old world, almost Hammurabi's code approach to morality of like, well, you know, it's not about whether magic is good or humanity is good. It's about maintaining the balance. And then seeing their evolution to where they kind of get just as jaded as Arthur does by the end. And, you know, they basically say, screw it, let's wipe the world clean. Which, you know, I feel like nihilism ultimately is the kind of antithesis of everything that people who try to change the world are battling against. So it was really interesting to kind of explore that, you know, with all these characters, like specifically Morgana, Merlin, Arthur, and you know, the Arcane Order, to a sense, that are all in their own way. They think they're making a better world. It just happens to be that each of their vision of a better world is completely antagonistic to each other. So it's up to our next generation of heroes, with Duxie and Claire and Jim, to figure out and sort through the mess of all of this, you know, endless conflict and try to find a new way forward.
I apologize. I did not watch Wizards again before we did this. Do the rest of the Arcane Order, do they have names?
They
Yes.
do. I think we're allowed to say what they are, but
I think we can.
If not,
yeah,
DreamWorks will let me know beforehand. And I'll cut
yeah,
it, so.
I'm waiting for the silent guiding hand of DreamWorks to come and go, shut up, you idiot, shut up. I think we can officially say Nari is, and they're tied to their elements. That's how we help describe them. Nari, the plant wizard. You see particularly in the clips that have gone out before Wizards, and then also Bellrock is the red fire wizard. with the big giant awesome skull helmet.
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, Balrog is now. They do say that name in the, because at first I thought they said Balrog, and I was like, what? Like,
No,
I was like,
definitely not
okay,
Balrog.
I mean-
It is distinctly different from Balrog.
It is legally distinct.
And actually, I remember because we had to change his name so many times for legal. But the ice wizard that you've also seen in some of the early clips is Scrael. And we spent a lot of time crafting backstories and origins for these wizards, and you're going to get just a little taste of their history.
But I'll suffice to say that they are meant to represent all of magic from Earth being this sort of like central focus, right? And so they kind of they come from the far corners of the Earth, and it is their duty to maintain the balance. And when they abdicate that duty, that's when things get pretty hairy, especially towards the end of the series.
Yeah. Let's talk about Steve and Lance.
Okay.
Just because I'm like, the similarities there, guys. Are we? Is Lance like Lancelot? Is Steve like descendant of Lancelot? Because I mean, the hair, the attitude, just like the general everything about him. It's like, yeah, they're pretty much the same.
Yeah, I mean,
or is that just like that general, like, Anthony Michael Hall character type?
It was intentional. Don't worry. It's not that we ran out of character models or anything. No, it's that was a joke that was pitched by Guillermo himself. I think and thematically we liked the idea that Lancelot is effectively, what Steve could become if he was a little bit more honorable, had a little bit more focus. He was sort of like a paragon of virtue for all his faults. But and I think the unspoken joke is, yes, maybe they are distantly related, but we left it unspoken because we didn't want to open any wormholes into people's logic.
I think it also speaks to Steve's nature that he's trying throughout all of Tales of Arcadia to be a better person. But who speaks to him the most about what it could be to be a hero? Not any of his friends, but a dude who's like, that dude's a good-looking guy who looks exactly like me. I should start taking some lessons from him. And then the mentorship bromance it begins, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's one of those, like, with Steve, the only one that Steve, I mean, we have Aja and Three Below and everything, but like the one person Steve really cares about is Steve. So obviously Steve is going to connect most with past hunky Steve.
Mm-hmm. And
I think we also felt like Steve was due an upgrade. I was like, he's put in his time as a creep slayer and a secret carrier of these guardians for long enough that, like, in our mind, like Steve and Eli, even though I believe he is currently off as royalty in Arcadia 5, or not necessarily canon, but he's royalty. That was our head canon.
He's a diplomat at least.
But he's a diplomat at least over in Arcadia 5. That Steve's earned his way into being an official guardian, and we really wanted that for him to have the rest of that journey in Wizards through our Camelot.
And so so the journey, basically the lesson that Lancelot imparts on him a few times before he officially passes the mantle is that, being a true knight of honor is someone who stands up for righteousness even when there's no one left to stand by your side or see what you're doing. So that's kind of the journey of Steve, is like, especially when we, spoiler alert, lose Lancelot, Steve realizes, it's on him to avenge him, no one else. And then when he's given the task of reforming the Knights of the Round Table, or however self-appointed it might be, he takes it very seriously and in a sincerity that I don't think we're used to seeing in Steve. But it's kind of nice to see him grow, especially when you consider where he started on Trollhunters, where he was just archetypical 80s bully that got ousted because fighting trolls is so much cooler than fighting jocks.
Yeah. I do like that there was a nice little creep slayer nod with him and Lancelot. I thought that was just like, oh, nice. Okay, let's talk about another thing that I noticed this season. For a show that is rated TVY7, you guys, you kill a lot of people, sometimes twice. Like, Just say like what's up with that? Why are we killing so many people in our kids show?
Well, I will say we don't kill people just to kill people. We always do it for a reason of some sort, whether the character has kind of reached the end of their arc and has something, that their death will impart or inspire in another character, or, if they're a tragic character like Arthur, they die because they refuse to learn the lesson, or it seemed like they almost learned the lesson, but it was too late. And you could even argue that Merlin is a tragic character as well in that regard. But it's the hero's journey, man. Like Death of the Mentor, and it comes down to another theme of this show is always like war is not great. Fighting for fighting's sake is terrible, and it comes with terrible loss. And as far as the TDY7 of it all, Netflix has been very generous in helping us kind of push the boundaries of that, because I think that they can, the standards are a little bit more flexible, but it's always done with intent. Would you agree with that, Chad?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it has to feel earned, and it has to feel not necessarily, I was gonna say natural, because death isn't, always expected. But that it felt like if it was going to do it, that it had a reasonable amount of care and attention given to it. I think even like Vendel in Troll Hunters, when he was murdered by Asurna, we had loved Vendel by that point so much, and it wasn't just you're really gonna want to see this villain now get taken down, but what does that mean for Troll Market, and to show the repercussions, of just that character's absence and what that means for Blinky and the aftershocks, right, of a death, and how it reflects those characters. There's several that are definitely also like I have emotional attachments to. Something about this year, the more and more as go on, there's some Wizards of Morgana kind of going like, why won't you just let me die? That I relate to. I relate to very much every morning when I wake up of just like, oh God, another one of these. Oh God. And also I really had a blast with the small one of Galahad, who I think you had to see in your episodes he eats it in that opening battle.
Yeah.
And it's kind of his best moment in his life, as far as we are aware of. It's his most heroic sacrifice. And then getting to see him in Camelot, 900 years earlier, and he's not necessarily the best dude. He's kind of a little too gleeful about, smashing trolls, and he's the wrong side of
about
knighthood.
The way that he's going is like, yeah, today's a good day to die. Let's do it. And you're like, all right,
very
you're gonna be fine.
Yeah, I think that was just a fun. I hadn't ever gotten to write a version where a character's gone and you saw their best side first, and then getting to learn a little bit more about them. I mean, I guess we do that great lore in Merlin's greater scale too, but definitely, it's a fun way to try to at least tackle a more serious subject.
Yeah, and that's some of the fun you can have with a time travel story, and we had a lot of those sort of interesting aspects going at once, where you kind of can tell stories in reverse. In the pilot of Wizards, Merlin has plans, but he doesn't tell anybody about them. He just says, "We have to go to the past, go!" And then you're like, "Whoa, why is this happening?" And then over the course of the show, you can kind of retroactively realize, like, oh, he looks at possible futures, and he must have seen this coming, and he must have seen that this was maybe a path that could save Duxie and his friends and make them strong enough to survive. But finding ways to kind of play with that hero's journey in a way that becomes very wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey became sort of like a clarion call, and something I think makes Wizards in particular somewhat special, because you have people inspiring, Jim inspires Callista, and then Callista in turn inspires Blinky, who then inspires Jim. It becomes this Ouroboros of mentorship, I suppose.
I did like all of us going into the past, and we get to meet all of these characters again. That I really liked, and especially getting to see older characters that were gone or who have already passed on come back in the series. I'm like, oh, I remember all you guys. That's so nice. And then you also find out that these other trolls have been around for 900 years, like the whatever troll and everything. And just like, all right, I mean, this dude's just been around, man. He's
He's
here to stay.
consistent. He's oblivious to the fate of the world around him with a whatever, and he's been going strong for almost a millennium. I think he's got something going on.
Hero. He's the secret hero of the series, I think.
They come in all shapes and sizes and catchphrases. There was one thing that I noticed. I think it's in the first episode when we see Doxy and he's like sweeping the floor. I think they do that. Like, I'm not going to be sweeping the floor forever thing, and then it's like 900 years later, and it's showing him sweeping the floor. That open sign that he has, I want one of those that like open, and then when it's closed, it's just nope.
Yeah,
I thought that
dude.
was great. Like, I want one of those so bad. I want it above my, like, whenever I'm out, I want it to be like, nope, he's not here, and then open.
All right, if I could brag about one contribution to the show, and this is the only contribution I had to Wizards, it was that open sign that I've been sketching for 15 years as someday I'll open, I guess, a Neon Works store and start making lighting. I don't know what it was. And so when we had a reason to put in an open close sign, I was like, I got just the thing. And it fills me with so much joy, Josh, to hear someone else appreciate it. That neon sign.
If DreamWorks, I'm not saying that we have people from DreamWorks listening, but if they are, if you want to do Wizards merch, that one sign. That's the only merch that needs to be done.
No Archie plush, just straight to the nope open sign.
We don't need cool Alfred Molina cat dragon familiars with glasses. No, we need a nope open sign. That's what we need.
You're joking. I am not. Let's get it going.
Oh no, I'm not joking either. Like, I want it so bad. Like,
I mean, do you want to print money? Well, yeah. On the note that you were discussing about the 900 years later with Dukesy, I think Dukesy or Hizzer Dukes is a really interesting character because, when we meet him, he's lived for 900 years. So the question,
real quick, how do we explain that? Like, how do we explain that all these people are still around? Like, Galahad has apparently been like floating on Avalon forever.
Merlin's magic is very good for your skin.
Okay,
it's very good for your skin.
Yeah, we've kind of established.
He's like right up there with South Korea. There's a nice balm that you can put on your face. His like anti-aging cream is like legit.
I think there was a joke when we were discussing that in the room because it's kind of funny that because you develop these sort of magic rules or whatnot, and you see it in Wizards or in Troll Hunters as well. That like, oh, of course sorcerers can live, basically immortal unless you kill them via magical means. Like it's perhaps the easiest trick once you become a sorcerer. And it's assumed that yes, Merlin did something, or perhaps there's something about the magic that's flying around Camelot all the time that inadvertently made Galahad, as the last surviving knight of the Round Table, also immortal. But with Hizzer Dukes himself, we thought it was kind of interesting that he's a character that when you meet him, he's been around for 900 years, and so from his perspective, as the show begins, he thinks he's already had his hero's journey. He thinks he's already figured it all out. He thinks he's ready for his shot, and that's a really interesting kind of place for a character to start. Because then you're like, oh, well, maybe he actually, that confidence is hiding something that deep down he secretly, isn't sure if he's ready yet. And so we can have that sort of, that cocksure attitude and perhaps cockiness, but in an endearing way, because you realize that sometimes those students that try to run for class president are doing so because they're not sure if they deserve it or not. And so his journey of eventually realizing that gold seal of approval of Merlin's approbation of saying, yes, you did it, son, actually isn't what he needed. It's that he just needed to come into his own as his own wizard. And, I think that the fact that he does that, and then in the end, when Merlin acknowledges him and he just kind of laughs and, hugs him, it's not so much that he's like, oh, thanks for giving me that approbation, Teach. He's saying, I forgive you, and that it's okay that I never needed your approbation. And in a way, Merlin has probably never had anybody say that to him or hug him ever, as far as I can tell. So I felt like that was a really great kind of symbol on Duxie's part, that he didn't have to do that for Merlin, but he did, just to say, like, rest well. You weren't perfect, but you tried. I'll take it from here. And I thought that was a great place to end with his character, because he's sort of taken his agency back in a way.
Yeah, he does have a really nice moment when he traps the other two members of the Arcane Order in his little sphere thing, when he's like, people have been telling me that, like, I can't do this, I'm not strong enough, but I am. And then, like, I thought that was really nice. I thought that was one of his best moments for me.
Awesome.
And I was like,
really,
nice,
that's really cool
yeah.
to hear.
Let's kind of talk about what happens to our boy. We start Tales of Arcadia off with Jim, and then we do kind of end it with Jim. He's there. He makes it the entire series, conveniently for being the protagonist. How long? Like, was it a Wizards thing where you were like, you know what, let's go ahead and bring him back to his original form, or was that something that you guys knew, previously, that you were like, you know what, we know at the end this is going to happen, or was it just writer's room of Wizards?
I mean, I would say somewhere in the middle, when you say, Chad, where it's like we had ideas of where the characters' arcs would go, but ultimately when we were actually breaking the season, I think sometimes the characters tell you where they need to go. Like with Jim in particular, we knew that part of his arc was kind of, he starts in a place of, he thinks he's gone through this hero's journey. He thinks he's the defender of the troll world and the human world, and he's sort of leading them, on into the horizon or whatever. But then he comes across a foe that mortally wounds him, and then suddenly he can't be that person anymore. And in many ways, his arc is learning that even heroes sometimes need to allow other people, or trust that other people will save them. As far as the removal of the enchantments on him, that part of that was sort of fulfilling Claire's arc, because hers was one of sort of guilt over not being able to protect Jim in that moment, because she hadn't quite mastered her abilities as a sorceress yet, and she didn't have her shadow staff. And she eventually realizes, I don't need a shadow staff to be a great sorceress. But ultimately, that was all to the end of fulfilling her promise to save Jim. We discussed at length all the different iterations. How many iterations would you say we talked about, Chad? Like 6?
A lot. I almost don't want to tell you all the different versions, because then you'll just be like, well, I liked that one better.
No.
Change it.
I won't get into details, but
yeah.
Was there a version where, Jim doesn't come back?
Oofa doofa.
I mean, you talk about it in the room. I think that's safe to say. You definitely need to consider all the possibilities of the outcomes of the characters, and I agree with what Aaron was saying about how we kind of tackle our story and our characters as having a good idea of where they're going, so you're not just writing blindly, but definitely letting the individual episodes and the character arc as it develops. You might be at episode 4 or 5 of your 10 episode season and realize that it's Jim's going down a different path, right? Or Claire's shadow magic is manifesting in a way that speaks more to her, and that also comes from insights from the other writers. People who are weighing in and sharing their own experiences and trying to pour as much of that as possible into the story. So yeah, there's definitely I think particularly the ending of Wizards, we went down several different possibilities of how it would end. And there's definitely some stuff we're setting up for later that's important, but also what was the best turn for Duxie, Claire, and like you said, for Jim, back when Jim first submerged himself in the tub back in Troll Hunters to turn into a troll, I don't think any of us were planning that it'd be reversed later. It was definitely if we're doing this to a character, if Jim's making this choice, it has to have permanent ramifications. It's a genuine sacrifice he's making for his friends and his family and for Troll Market. And so to even talk about undoing that had to be really earned to us, both for Jim and for Claire and for the story in general.
And ultimately we decided, when in that final moment, when you're there and Claire literally does the impossible, she reaches deep into herself and pulls whatever inner magic that she has as an intuitive sorceress and as a person and as this person's most beloved character. In that moment, what she's doing is basically she's using her own magics, her own abilities to try to give Jim another chance. And it felt, we discussed at one point, like, well, what if she brings him back, but he's just troll form? And that didn't feel right to us because in many ways, as I've hinted at a couple times, the journey of Wizards is like, how do you save the world without it just saving the world the way other people do it or have told you to do it? And it's about that old generation of thinking that's resulted in this endless cycle of violence and bloodshed and apocalypse stuff versus our young heroes, the next generation, who are all, trying to find a new path, and you don't know what's going to happen next. And so as part of that kind of thematic element, we were like, if Claire is going to somehow draw it out of herself to save Jim and remove this corruptive magic that has influenced him, it means getting rid of the corruption. It means getting rid of all the magic that had been done to him and just giving him a clean slate perhaps the first time, choose again how he wants to become. And as far as where that leads, that's an interesting story that, we thought would be not an easy resolution for Jim, but a new beginning.
Yeah.
Josh, we have time for one more question.
Oh yeah, I was just about to wrap up.
Perfect.
All right. So what has been one of your favorite things to work on this season with Wizards?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, for our last question, I made it the hardest question.
I mean, I can just start by saying, it was really exciting to kind of just dive in and see, now that our audience is effectively caught up and they know the world and they know the players, what more can we say about this world, that it seems to be ending one more time, and how do you really kind of come together and do it yourself? I also really, and I'm sure Chad will say this too, it was really fun coming up with the monsters and the ways we can kind of subvert expectations wherever we could, both with the characters we know and with Arthurian lore. I don't think anybody was expecting Arthur to be a really hard-ass jerk, but he is, and you have to kind of contend with what's the when you're faced with the real person of the legend. It seems that history printed the legend, but how can you use that to inspire what needs to be done in order to protect the world?
Yeah, I'll agree with all of that. I think also just as his show is now finally coming out, getting to see people's reactions to Dukesy and Archie, especially since they're what's been released so far, of people connecting to that character and rooting for them, even though they got little tastes of them in the previous seasons. It's really sweet and great to feel, because I remember there's a couple illustrations, character explorations that one of our story artists, Tenny, who you should check out on Twitter if you don't already. She's amazing. Did of Archie and Dukesy and some of the other characters for us early on, just like mood pieces. Dukesy lounging around listening to music, or while Archie tucking him in while he's sleeping on the couch. Seems a little stuff, but was really so, for us, images and character moments that have been kind of in our heads for years. It's weird, you get really attached to your characters. Like Tenny, not Tenny, Dukesy is our boy. We care about him a lot. and to get to see folks respond and connect to him and find shades of themselves in it, in fan art and sharing experiences online, that's so great. Like that's what we're wanting the story to be anyway, is something that people can relate to and see themselves in Dukesy. That's all worth it, right?
Yeah. Well, just to piggyback on that, it was really nice too, because Dukesy's character in particular, I think we were hoping to tell a story that was for people that maybe didn't have that perfect mentor figure, that an absent or emotionally distant parent, and they have to figure it out for themselves. So I think it was rewarding for us to be able to put something on screen where it wasn't about where you came from. It's about what you do with the people that you have and the chances you get.
Yeah. If I can just give a shout out to who I mentioned, Tenny on Twitter. If you want to follow her Twitter at TENYAIS. All of the Tales of Arcadia crew are phenomenal, and they've begun sharing inner working stuff, behind the scenes stuff on the show that I think is not only fantastic art, but if you're interested in the animation process, worth checking out.
Absolutely.
Nice. And guys, Wizards Tales of Arcadia is available on Netflix now. We'll put a link in the bio. Aaron, Chad, thanks again so much for coming on. Where can everybody find you guys social media wise if they want to follow you guys?
My social media is Good Aaron on Twitter. That's probably the easiest way to see the stuff. I post a lot of, anytime I see something that's Tales of Arcadia related or Star Trek related, sometimes dumb jokes. So you can check me out at Good Aaron, GOODAARON.
And I'm at Quantum Theory. That's QUANDTUM Theory on most social media that I still have. You'll find me there. Josh, thank you so much for having us on, man. It's been a blast talking about Wizards.
Oh, no worries at all. And we'll put everybody's links to social media in the show notes. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Josh L. Cain. You can find the podcast on Instagram at What's Up Fandom, on Twitter at What's Up Fandom PC for podcast. All of our episodes are available iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Google Play, Spotify, and at our website, animationstationpodcast.com, because I'm lazy and haven't changed the website yet. Guys, again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Remember, a wizard does not make mistakes. He makes unexpected possibilities.
Excellent. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
I'm not the leading authority on waxing poetic or using big words, but this writer is my philosophy about living in such a world.